Hello everyone, my name is Brian from Unity Media Network, and this is actually another segment of our very first segment of our show, the Monday Club, and I'm joined here with Alan and Dean.
Hey, everyone.
Tonight we're actually going to be talking, to kick it off, we're going to be talking to Kevin Cullinane. He's the communications, head of communications for Cork Airport. We know people have a lot of questions on what's going to happen in 2021 with the airport, numbers, and so on. So we'll be back with Kevin right after this. So Kevin, thanks very much for joining us on this Monday night. Very glad you can make it.
Delighted to be here.
Thanks for joining us, Kevin.
Evening, Kevin.
So Kevin, just on that, look, we'll get right into it. I think a lot of people want to know what's going to happen with 2021, obviously, but we want to start off in 2020. So things were good, we'd say, in February 2020. Numbers were up. You were about to showcase an arts exhibition on February 26th, I think, at Cork Airport. And then we hit the pandemic. So just look, what was it like initially at the start of it all in March 2020, we'd say?
I suppose it had started to become prevalent in China initially, and I remember we received posters from the Department of Health, these purple-coloured posters saying, could we just put them up around the terminal to alert any passengers that had arrived back from China or were travelling to China, to alert them that there was this strain of a virus that had broken out there. And then obviously over the coming weeks, we started to see the prevalence of this virus starting to hit Europe. And if you remember back, Italy was particularly hit. And I remember we had one suspected case that arrived into the baggage hall. He self-declared himself suffering from a fever. And I remember, like, it was almost, a realization this could be here. And I suppose in a very selfish way, you didn't want to be the first port or airport in the country that was going to be across the media news waves as having, a case here. Now, as it turned out, that case wasn't an actual case, because the first case in Ireland came through Dublin Airport, a person returning to the north of Ireland. But I suppose suddenly then, we had a presence in our baggage hall of Department of Health officials, so they were starting to advise passengers if they had any of these early symptoms, which was obviously this high temperature or high fever or persistent cough, to make themselves known to local health authorities. Or obviously then posters started to be printed at a rate of knots. They were literally being updated daily. And we were putting information up on our flight information screens, the TV screens you see above the check-in desks and above the departure gates. And then I suppose once the first case had been officially confirmed here in Ireland, it was a case of, everyone being even further vigilant and starting to take the necessary public health measures that the government were advising us of. And I suppose slowly the realization was starting to dawn that this was very, very serious. And I suppose we'll all recall that date back around St. Patrick's Day when the then Taoiseach Leo Varadkar appeared on the steps of the Irish ambassador's residence in Washington, D.C. to basically tell us a lockdown was coming.
Is there a protocol, Kevin, in place? Obviously, this disease has come about kind of out of nowhere, really. But is there protocols within the airport for events such as this happening, where there's an outbreak and obviously passengers coming from all over the world into Cork?
Yeah, so I suppose ordinarily, like the airport has an emergency plan. Most large sites would have it, whether you're a pharmaceutical company or even like the Port of Cork had to activate its emergency plan with the fire in Ringaskiddy last weekend. So you have these emergency plans, and we dry test these a couple of times a year, particularly with other emergency services, whether it's the Gardaí or the HSE Ambulance Service or the Irish Aviation Authority. And we would have factored into that plan things like pandemics, but these are usually desktop exercises that you hope and pray you're never going to have to actually activate. So we've obviously been tweaking that plan as public health advice has come further into the domain, and reminding ourselves, I suppose, that back in March, we knew very little about this virus. Thankfully, over the last 9 or 10 intervening months, public health advice has learned a lot more about the virus and how to treat it. But over the initial, first few weeks and months, we were very much, feeling our way around this situation, putting in place all the public health measures that we needed to put in place, all of the protocols in place with particularly public health, HSC, and the health providers, that if we did have a case appear into the airport, or, what would happen if a whole flight was contaminated. And so those various contingencies and measures would have been factored into our planning at the very early stages.
Brian, we can talk about the airport all day, but it's obviously full of employees as well. So how did that change their lives on a daily basis within the airport?
So initially, people were being asked to do things differently and do different things to respond. But I suppose it wasn't until the very first lockdown where suddenly people that wouldn't be necessarily working on the front line, people in back offices like myself, were being asked and advised to work from home. Now, thankfully, I had taken a couple of measures a couple of years back with another emergency that we were experiencing when I had very poor broadband at home, and it was actually during the Late Toy Show when I needed to urgently get out a news release, and I had less than half a mega broadband width at home, and trying to do that on a Friday night was painful, to say the least. So at least I was equipped, and a lot of other colleagues had started to bring laptops home on a nightly basis, making sure that we had reasonably good broadband at home to work from home. Other mobile devices, iPads, iPhones, mobile phones, multiple chargers. They were literally in the grab bag every evening leaving the airport. And once we went into kind of lockdown 1, then it was a case of setting up home offices. And I think most people have now seen their friends and colleagues' home offices. A lot of us are working from 2 and 3 screens to try and keep abreast of the workload from dawn to dusk every night and beyond.
Mm-hmm.
So for a lot of people, it was different. But then for people working on the front line, it was a case of starting to get used to additional health and safety measures, such as the wearing of face masks, face coverings, face shields, getting used to the multiple hand sanitization regimes that we've all got used to, washing your hands, use hand sanitizer when you couldn't wash your hands, observing social distance with passengers, and even making tweaks and changes to various security protocols as passengers went through the airport. So a lot of different policies and procedures to get used to if you were still working at the airport, and I suppose the new reality of getting used to work at home.
Like a lot of people, ourselves included, the airport, you generally get to once, maybe twice a year if you're lucky, on holidays or if you have a business trip. But to go from thousands and thousands of passengers every day to down to maybe a couple of hundred as it is now, what does that make the airport resemble now in the current climate?
It makes it very surreal. It makes it very empty. A lot of people have commented that have been up to the airport that they feel like they're in a bad B-rate movie. We've all seen them in the past. It just all of the food and beverage outlets are closed. The Bank of Ireland closed its branch very early on in the pandemic. With only 1 or 2 flights a day, and at the moment now on Tuesdays and Thursdays we're back to having no flights on those 2 days. You're lucky if you have 1 check-in desk open. So you may only come across, a single person at a check-in desk. You'll meet a couple of people at the security area, and then you'll go through the retail shop, which has remained open. And then, at the moment, all of the food and beverage outlets, cafes, bars, restaurants are all shut. So you have this huge absence of people in the terminal. On a busy day in the summer, you'd have 10,000 passengers going through a day, and on average, for every 2 passengers, you have another meter or greeter or taxi driver or bus driver. So, a huge influx of people, 15,000 people a day in the terminal. And then you've that reduced down to a trickle, less than 100 in any given day that there's flights.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, even on that point now as well, like a lot of the local economy out there, we'd say even in the airport, there would be people out there spending money, and there would have been a good circulation of money for people who were not even flying. So a lot of the cafe, the restaurant, the pub would have done good business from people just taking a trip out there. I know I found myself out there, on one or two occasions where I haven't been flying or saying goodbye to people. But even Dean made a good point the other day. It's like, would there be a case of would many people have lost their jobs out in Cork Airport that maybe sitting waiting now to see what's kind of happening, and is 2021 looking a bit better generally around all of that?
But the airport, it's a bit like a small town in some respects, because you have those that are directly employed by the management company that operates the airport, which is about 190 people. But then there's another 1,500 people that work at the airport for different companies. So all of those food and beverage companies have chefs, they have catering staff, they have waiters, they have waitresses. You have bus drivers, you have 2 hotels on the site. You have, as I say, you would have had a bank branch. Then you have the airlines themselves. They have ground handling companies. They have fueling companies. So all of the food and beverage staff, they were basically furloughed throughout this. The bank branch staff obviously have been redeployed to other branches in the area. Thankfully, none of the direct employees at the airport lost their jobs per se, but we very quickly realized, come the autumn, that things were going to have to be done differently. So all staff have been given a range of options to think about. Some people have taken and availed of a generous voluntary severance scheme, and about 25 people have left the business over the last number of months to take that and to obviously use the redundancy to either look for other gainful employment or to look for a new direction in their lives. Some people have opted for reduced hours. Some have looked for a career break for anything between like 1 and 3 years. But thankfully, while all staff have been on a 20% cut in salaries that work for the airport management company, there was no forced redundancies per se. So, but a lot of people that would have been working at the airport haven't worked really at the airport since last March, if they're working for kind of third-party concessionaires.
Yeah, there's a lot of questions around, I suppose, what we're talking about, and if anybody watching has any questions that they'd like us to put to Kevin, you can do so if you're on any of the social media platforms there as well. Dean?
Yeah, here's a short video on how travel is now.
We've missed you at Cork Airport, and we're looking forward to seeing you back soon. While you've been away, we've taken time out to prepare for your return. We want you to enjoy flying again from Ireland's friendliest, cleanest and easiest airport. Everyone is here to ensure you enjoy a safe and pleasant journey. We're ready to provide you with our award-winning world-class customer service again. Flying will feel a little different at first, but the same friendly staff are here to help you. Rest assured, we have the highest standards in safety and cleaning to protect you and our colleagues. Let us show you around so you're familiar with the new passenger journey at Cork Airport. Please continue to do what is asked of us. Wash our hands frequently, maintain good cough and sneezing etiquette, avoid touching eyes, nose or mouth with unwashed hands, and maintain social or physical distance from other people. When you arrive into Cork Airport, you'll also notice some changes. You should wear your face covering throughout your entire journey until you've reached your final destination. The world we knew has changed, but you'll still enjoy the same friendly customer service you've come to love at Cork Airport. We've always gone the extra mile to look after our customers, and that hasn't changed. You'll still enjoy the best airport experience in Europe. From all the crew at Cork Airport, love taking off, and we look forward to seeing you soon.
So, Kevin, so Kevin, we just see now, look, the video was pre-January 2021, obviously has like, look, to be honest, a lot of people are going to have questions as we move into 2021. If anybody does have any questions, make sure to leave a comment. Look, the impact of Brexit and duty-free, we'll be getting onto that. But look, Kevin, that video, obviously pre-December 2020, they were the advisories on travelling to and from Cork Airport. As we said, look, passenger numbers were, we'd say, 10,000 a day back in the first pre-March 2020, and then it went to, I think it was 3 services. Air France was one of them. It was roughly between 300 and 400 passengers. So, like, has much changed since then, or what way are we looking forward to 2021 in travelling to and from?
Well, it really went down to a trickle from the end of October into November. Very few people flying in November. We were back down to less than 4% of the normal passenger numbers you'd expect that time of the year. There was a little bit, very minor pickup in the 2 weeks prior to Christmas, purely because there were so few flights available. A lot of the normal services, we would have had 32 destinations served in Christmas 2019. We had 5 last month. And as of this week, Ryanair have again suspended all of their services out of Cork. So we're left now with just 2 airlines operating, Aer Lingus and KLM. Aer Lingus are doing a 3 times weekly service to London Heathrow, and KLM are doing a 5 times a week service to Amsterdam. So 2 airlines operating 2 routes. When you think in the height of the summer, ordinarily we'd have 52 routes with 8 airlines. So, as you say, there's been even further changes since the start of the new year, particularly to and from the UK. Any passengers coming in now on those Heathrow flights have to have a confirmed negative test within 72 hours of travel. They're advised of that by their airline before they leave the UK. They're advised of it again at the departure gate in London Heathrow. And the Gardaí are checking on that as passengers come in. And so far, there's been a very high compliance rate. Just a handful of passengers who claimed that they weren't aware of the new policy. So it has been constantly changing for the last 10 months.
And Kevin, a lot of people as well may not understand the back end stuff. I know I wouldn't be fully qualified on it, but at the end of the day, this is a business. So the fact that you're down to 2 flights, that's simply down to numbers for these flights to not proceed because there's no demand for them. What do you envisage the next 6 months looking like from the communications you have with the airlines?
Well, you're right, Alan. I mean, if you lose, over 2 million passengers in a year, when you think we were down to literally 530,000 passengers last year, of which 400,000 of them were in the first 3 months of last year. So from April 1st through to December 31st, there was only 130,000 people went through the airport. Wow. When you're down 2 million passengers, you're down the income from all of those flights that you would gain from those airline customers, which are also down ancillary revenues that people might have spent on teas or coffees, and some of the share of that revenue that we would have got from some of our concessionaires. So the direct impact on Cork Airport was the loss of about 23 million euro in revenues last year. And the start of the winter months are always difficult anyway. So we we would have anticipated January, February, March of this year are going to be equally tough. As I say, very few flights, only 2 destinations served. And really what happens next, it really is in the hands of the Irish people, because airlines need to see a restoration of confidence. They need to see that, the community transmission of this disease has been, suppressed significantly. Ireland is now in the unenviable position in the world where we have the highest incident rate per million of our population than any other country in the world. So the situation right now is rather bleak. We need to see, the transmission of this disease really, really significantly suppressed over the coming weeks. And that then hopefully will give airlines more confidence to start looking at what services can they start to restore from maybe the start of June this summer. Mm-hmm. But it's going to be a very slow return to anything resembling normality. We'll see a handful maybe of routes if, and it's a big if the transmission rate of the disease can be significantly suppressed over the coming weeks. Mm-hmm. But it's going to be a very slow and gradual rebuild. We're starting literally from ground zero. I say, we're now at 2 routes. We were at 52. We have a long way to climb back, but we're confident. We have, the plans and the people in place to do that over the next couple of years. But it could take onto 2024, 2025 to get anywhere back to the 2019 levels.
So just on that as well, Kevin, thanks very much for that. But just on that, what we're going to do is we're going to take a quick short break. Then we're going to get on to, I know Dean is eager to find out about how Brexit is going to impact Cork Airport and duty free and a lot of other people in Cork. So we'll be back right after this.
Hi everybody, it's Alan from Unity here, and we're asking you if you'd like to get involved. If you're a community group, sporting organisation, or indeed a business you'd like to take part, we'd love to hear from you. You can contact us on our usual social media platforms, of course our website unitymedianetwork.com.
Hi Kevin, so look, we seem to be like, or I'm sure you're hoping that you're like Boris Johnson dancing around the Brexit question. I'm sure it's a question that comes up every day in your own meetings. Duty free, travel between the 2 countries. What are your thoughts and what's the plans in place for this year and next year?
Well, I suppose if there was one small silver lining out of everything that's been going on, particularly around Brexit, and obviously I suppose we all welcomed that we finally got a Brexit deal on Christmas Eve. But it's given a very short lead in time to the 1st of January. But the one thing it has brought back is duty-free sales on flights to and from the UK. So the UK is now firmly outside of the EU. So while if you're traveling within the EU, the same free movement of goods and services continues, but you can now buy duty-free tobacco and alcohol to bring back into the country on your return. So that's a limited 200 cigarettes coming from the UK, a litre of spirits or 4 litres of wine. So it's a little bit of good news for people if they do get to travel over to the UK or London this year. They'll be able to purchase duty free either on the way out or on the way back in. Obviously, depending on which way you're traveling. You'll be subject to either Her Majesty's customs restrictions or the revenue customs regime here. But it is a little bit of good news, particularly for the retail sector in our airports, that will get a little bit of boost from increased sales as a result.
And just to touch on that point, Kevin, especially about Brexit, and do you think that might increase numbers, or should people be scared or encouraged to basically fly when things do, if they do after January come back to some bit of travel back and forth? Should people be looking into that, or would that be an option, or is that something the airport might encourage or discourage based on the situation?
Yeah, it's a good question, because I suppose there's 2 distinct things going on, but they just seem to have, happened at the same time. Brexit has happened, and for all intents and purposes, very little has changed in terms of air travel between Ireland and the UK. But then you have COVID, and you have, up to a couple of weeks ago, the prevalence of COVID in the community in the UK was far worse than it is here. We've leapfrogged not only the UK, but also the US of A at this stage. So, people are being very cautious about travel. They realize, the government advice for several months had been only to travel if it was absolutely for an essential reason. Over the summer months, the real reason people were traveling, sadly, was to attend funerals in either direction. But I think, what's incumbent on everyone and what everyone is trying to do right now, whether you're in the UK or in Ireland, is to stay at home, do all of the public health measures we've been asked to do, limit our contacts, continue to do the basics in terms of, hand hygiene and cough etiquette and social distancing, but just to limit our numbers of contacts, to only leave home if it's absolutely essential. And if we can do that and suppress the numbers back down to where we were, last summer, then people will have the confidence to travel again. And when they do, then you'll start to see airlines having the confidence to restore routes. So it can become a virtual cycle if we suppress the curve.
I think, yeah.
Sorry.
I was just going to say, I'd say a 2 million decrease in travel numbers this year would have probably, if the pandemic wasn't there and this whole Brexit happened, then we would have seen an increase of 4 million passengers going back and forth, I'd say. So it is a crossover between the good and the bad,
Yeah, I mean, I suppose it's little solace now, but, coming into last year, we were the fastest growing airport in Ireland. We'd had 25% growth in passenger numbers over the previous 4 years. And, we were strongly on target to hit about 2.8 million passengers last year before COVID hit our shores. And we would have been probably back up to around over 3 million passengers this year. Now, as I say, we're starting literally from rock bottom again. 530,000 passengers last year. We'll do well to match that again this year because, at the moment, first 3 months, as I say, will be very poor in terms of travel numbers. It'll be a very slow trickle of a return in the next 3 months. And then you're not going to really see any acceleration in that growth until the summer comes. So this year isn't going to be a whole lot different from 2020. As I say, it's going to probably take, the best part of 3 years to rebuild those numbers and those destinations back up.
Like you mentioned there, Kevin, about positivity and about looking ahead. Like we see in the newspapers today, Brian brought up an article about the passenger numbers down by 80%. But still, the Cork Airport is on a journey between now and the futures ahead by investing in a huge sum of money to redevelop the airport. That's probably the biggest since we've last seen the new terminal. So for the next 15 or 20 years, as day follows night, these problems will always change. But for the next 15 or 20 years, there is a plan that you're on that will hopefully rebuild us out of this pandemic situation. Is that fair to say?
It's fair to say because, people don't travel from one country to another to experience the airport. The airport is a means to an end. We're vital for the regional economy, for jobs in the region, for tourism, for the significant amount of inward investment that Ireland and the south of Ireland enjoys. Apple wouldn't have its European headquarters here in Cork if we didn't have international connectivity. We wouldn't have 30,000 people employed in the pharma, biopharma and ICT sectors if we didn't have an international airport. So the airport is a vital economic engine, and it's going to be here for the long haul, pardon the pun. So it's vital that we continue to invest in that very important strategic asset. We're already out to procurement at the moment to appoint a contractor in March. We have a major reconstruction job to do on the main runway at Cork Airport to ensure that we can rebuild bigger and better than what we were at coming into the pandemic. We want to get those UK and continental European routes back. Mm-hmm. And we also want to hold on to our claim to be Ireland's newest transatlantic airport by restoring connectivity back to the United States over the next 3 to 4 years. So we'll do that by investing in infrastructure. Last year, we invested about €12 million in our new baggage screening system, which is mandatory under new EU legislation. And tens of millions will be invested this year and next on the runway reconstruction project. So we're not sitting back. We're planning for the future, and we aim to come back, as I say, bigger, bolder, and better than we were coming into this.
That's very positive.
Just on that point, Kevin, so like with global crisis and pandemics and recessions, there's always an opportunity for a business to expand and become bigger and better when they come through it. I'm sure you're talking with the key stakeholders every day on conference calls and in chats and stuff like that. What's the plans in the short term and the long term for the airport to build on the success over the past few years?
Well, the big asset that Cork Airport has is that we have, the biggest metropolitan city region in the Republic of Ireland on our doorstep. There's 1.6 million people living within a 90-minute commute of Cork Airport. That's why it is the state's second biggest and best connected airport ordinarily. That's why we have the confidence, looking down over the next 3, 4, 5 years, that we will rebuild back to the lofty heights we were at in 2019. We have a strong road to go, a difficult road in the short term, but over time, we had 9 scheduled airlines operating out of Cork Airport in 2019. We're confident we can bring that back well over 10 airlines operating to more than 50 destinations again. We want to get back transatlantic traffic, as I say. Nobody's going to rest easy at Cork Airport until we have a direct service to New York in the next 5 or 6 years. So, we have strong and big ambitions for the airport because we realise Cork has big ambitions. It's going to be the fastest growing city region in the country between now and 2040. We have a strong catchment base. We have strong employment in the region. We have some small hurdles and a little bit of turbulence to go through in the short term, but long term, we'll be back, as I say, bigger, bolder, and better than we were coming into this.
The second biggest English-speaking city in the EU now since January 1st. So we took that from England, thankfully.
Yeah, I mean Cork, and not just Cork, because we're not just Cork's airport. We're also Kerry, Limerick, Tipperary, and Waterford's airport as well. So a lot of people in the broader catchment area depend on us for connectivity. But also tourism and hospitality were the first sectors directly hit by this pandemic. They were the first one into the crisis, and they'll probably be the last ones out of it. But if we're to get international visitors back, onto the wild Atlantic Way and Ireland's ancient East, we're going to need strong international connectivity. And that's going to be vitally important for our tourism sectors as well. And that's our biggest indigenous industry, bigger than agriculture these days. So not just for the FDI investment in the region, but also for export earnings from tourism, it's important that the airport rebounds strongly.
Mm-hmm. I just see a message from somebody there. Nano, I would imagine lots of people are counting the months, the Lanzarote flight starting up. Always a very popular destination for Cork people.
Yeah.
Yeah, look, we'd hope that if the virus can be suppressed at both ends of any route, whether that's out to the Canaries or other destinations. And what's vitally important is that the community transmission of the disease is suppressed. So airlines will follow demand, and there is extremely strong demand ordinarily for flights to the various Canary Islands out of Cork. And everyone is looking, I think, at this stage to getting away at some stage after what we've all been through over the past 12 months. So fingers crossed.
Money there. Like, that's the one thing before we finish up to note as well, that not everybody is out of work in this pandemic. Not everybody has taken a hit financially. Even those people who have still want to travel. So when it all changes, all of those airlines will come back because there will be a huge demand for those flights.
And this is so true. I mean, there's pent-up demand now because people haven't been able to visit family or friends in the short term because of the restrictions. People are suffering from cabin fever at this stage because they haven't been away on a break, either a short break or a holiday in 12 months. And as you rightly say, some sectors have been badly hit, particularly if you've been working in tourism or hospitality. You've certainly been hit. But then, as we've seen from the Exchequer returns, the economy has still been doing well. Tax returns from the corporate sector, from PAYE taxpayers have been up. So, the government has been surprised by how resilient the economy has been throughout this. So hopefully, as I say, if things can improve over the next couple of weeks and indeed months, We'll get flights back operating to some of the traditional sun destinations, as well as those routes that are vital for commerce and trade.
Yeah, and even on that one, no, I think it was Nano actually bait me to that question, because that was actually going to be my question, because I'm really looking forward to holiday. Even on that one, Kevin, look, I'm sure people can rest assured that Cork Airport have everything in place, that when or things do go back to some of the normality and there is an influx of flights, people will be cared for and there'll be plenty of options. But look, on that, I'm going to say thank you very much for joining us on the very first episode of the Monday Club. We were really glad to have you come on behalf of Cork Airport and answer all the questions that a lot of people had. We might actually revisit this mid-year if you'll be willing to come back on again.
In Lanzarote.
In Lanzarote. We'll do it direct from Lanzarote. So on that, Kevin, thank you very much. I'm sure the lads might want to have something to say.
Yeah, like that. Just thanks very much. Look, what we're endeavouring to do here with the Monday Club is to bring people closer to some information that they might normally get in the mainstream media. Obviously, it's well publicised. You're very forthcoming and you're in the media a lot. But we just felt it was good to start off with a positive message that, as you rightly said, things will change. It's not going to be here forever. Yes, we'll have to adapt, but it will be positive moving forward. So thanks very much. You made some very interesting points to our listeners, our viewers and ourselves. So thanks very much indeed for your time.
Yeah, I echo what the lads say as well, Kevin. Thanks very much. You spoke very well, and not a lot of people would know exactly what goes on in the airport. We all just see it as you go to the airport, you check in, you have a pint, and you're gone. And that's it. That's all you know about the airport. But I didn't know there was so many people working out there, and they've all been affected as well as everyone has in Ireland. So we'll get back to where we were a few years ago, and we'll be flying again. Pardon the pun.
Yeah, the one thing that's certain is, this will pass, and we look back on it in a couple of years' time as a major emergency, not just for Ireland and Cork, but indeed the world. But we will fly again, and rest assured, Cork Airport's future is definitely as promising as its past has been immensely proud. So we look forward to having people on their way again presently.
Very best of luck.
Thanks very much, Kevin.
Thank you.
And on that note, I'm going to have to put myself full screen now for some reason. Sorry, lads. And on that note, next week we will be doing the show again as normal, the Monday Club, 8:30. Our guest this next week will be somebody involved with the pulse of the community, and I'm sure he'll have a lot to offer people as regards with what way people are feeling and where you can go and get information and get help on this. Either way, if you want to get in contact with myself, Alan, or Dean, you can Brian, Alan, or Dean at unimedianetwork.com. And also Dean has a bit more information here. We hope to see you next week, next Monday, 8:30, the Monday Club. Now, lads, cheeky winning streak wave.
And this is the first dry Monday Club that any of us have ever been in.
Dean from Unity Media Network here. If you or anyone own a business or you specialise in a certain topic, you want to contribute in some way or you need help in a certain area, contact us via Messenger, DM on Twitter, or email us admin@unitymedianetwork.com, or visit the website and fill out the contact form and we'll contact you.